After a 2-month delay because of COVID-19 pandemic, China's top political advisory body, the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, opened its annual session in Beijing on Thursday. And what is on the top of the agenda? How much of the session will be devoted to the talks on pandemic? To talk about these issues and more, I'm pleased to be joined by Jia Qingguo, member of the Standing Committee of the CPPCC's National Committee, Wang Huiyao, president of the Center for China and Globalization, and later Professor Fu Jun of Political Economy and Public Policy, the academic dean of Institute of South-South Cooperation and Development. That is our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. Let me start with you, Mr. Jia. Well, this year's political season is taking place at a time when the COVID-19 is still raging around the world. So how different will this year's session be, given the circumstances in terms of both the tone and the contents?
Well, this year's especially different. The session is short. And also, there are a lot of provisions to make sure that it's safe. But the agenda is full. A lot of issues are going to be discussed. And people probably will focus a lot on how to fight the pandemic and how to, speed up the economic development, revive the economy, and a lot of other issues.
And do political advisors worry about the balance of containing the pandemic and speeding up China's economic recovery?
Of course, these two issues are going to be the focus of this session. I think a lot of people are going to come up with proposals as to how to first to fight the pandemic in the next phase, and also to deal with the economy.
It seems that we've lost the signal from Mr. Jia. So, Mr. Wang, you also serve as a political advisory to a local level, but what are the political advisors been talking about China's response to the pandemic?
Well, I think that today the opening of CPPCC is really a very symbolic event, and coupled with tomorrow's opening of National People's Congress. You see, this is the first time for the last 3 months that China has finally opened its national political event that is really get attention of the world, particularly amidst the pandemic fighting. As we can see that this CPPCC annual meeting will summarize what has been achieved the last year. Will really propose what we'll be doing this year. So there will be many issues to be covered. For example, how to fight the pandemic continuously, as you said, maintain the container virus, but also expanding the economic activities. Of course, also this year serves as the final year of elevating all the extreme poverty by the end of 2020, and the government is not slowing down on that target either. So that's going to be discussed. Also, more important, I think that attaches a lot of importance now to the many other issues as well. That because of the this pandemic, we are how we can really raise the speed of the economic growth. How can we balance the fighting the pandemic and also at the same time expand the economy, and also lifting the poverty, fulfill the goal of a well-to-do society, and internationally how we can really get along with all the other countries and jointly fighting, supporting international organizations. And also, most important, this event is really strongly suggest that Chinese government is back to normal, back into the action seats, and a really leading country forward.
Indeed, and China's political life is back to normal. That is important. Mr. Jia, let's continue our talks on your work, because the National Committee of CPPCC announced it has received nearly 300 proposals related to epidemic response from the political advisors. Of course, we understand the political advisors gathering every year is to revisit some of the work of the past year and look forward to next year's work. Will these proposals make a difference on China's public health system?
Of course. I think the government is eager to solicitate the proposals and to
Well, it seems we keep breaking off with Mr. Jia there. Let's try to talk with Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang, you also been paying attention to China's efforts in containing the epidemic. And of course, people are asking, what is wrong with China's public health system? Is there anything we can improve on? What do you think the key issues that need to be addressed?
Absolutely. I think China also is having a learning curve on that as well. For example, first in knowing the pandemic, but also now we certainly realize how we can prevent the virus pandemic and how we can cure them together, and the whole society approach in terms of containing pandemic, and also particularly the economic and also the medical treatment of those diseases are really of the most important. So the country public health management system needs a great improvement. I think we have gained a lot of experience, we have learned a lot of lessons, and also we have achieved a lot of progress. So I think this time will serve as a great progress report, but also will greatly enhance and also improve the Chinese health management system, but also shows how China can work with the international community, with WHO, with all the international experts, but also on same thing, how Western medicine, Chinese traditional medicine, and all the treatment experience be summarized, be really enhanced, particularly how to prevent and have the authority to really take actions in preventing the disease of most importance.
And we try to talk to Mr. Jia by phone. We're sorry for the technicality problem. Mr. Jia, earlier I mentioned the political advisors' proposals. What is your take on their proposals' impact on the government's work?
Yeah, I think the government has been eager to solicit opinions and advice from the members of the CPPCC. And in the past, I think they have adopted a lot of suggestions, and of course that helped to improve the government work. And there are a lot of new proposals with regard to how to beat the virus in the days to come. And this probably include more government investment in the public health system, and more investment in the efforts to develop the antibodies, drugs, and also the other medical methods to deal with the virus, and how to revive the economy. There are all kinds of ideas coming up. One of the ideas I just read is that the government should issue some vouchers to people, like 2,000 yuan per person, to encourage spending. So there are all kinds of ideas people come up with, and the government probably would pick and choose and then use them to revive the economy.
After COVID-19 emerged in Wuhan, China has done a lot to contain the epidemic, but there's still international criticism about transparency of the Chinese system and the effectiveness of early warning. What do you think China needs to do?
Well, I think China did a lot, actually, in the past. China, passed the sequence of the virus as soon as it had developed it, identified to the WHO and also other countries, China had also tried to inform other countries the progress here. In the future, I think, and also China, sends tons of medical supplies to other countries in their efforts to fight the virus. In the future, I think the Chinese government probably would do more, as President Xi Jinping, committed in his WHO speech recently, that China would give $2 billion aid to help fight the virus. And of course, China would continue to collaborate with international organizations and also scientists in other countries to develop the antibody, the drugs, and the vaccine. So China would continue to do a lot of things in international cooperation to live up its responsibilities.
And Mr. Wang, I presume you have also talked to international counterparts on China's response and what might be done better in the future. So how do you look at their criticism and even sometimes accusations about China's response?
Well, I think that this pandemic is the first time hit the world. I mean, we have something heard on Earth from Mars. The global villager has being attacked by the outside forces that nobody knows before. So it naturally takes a bit of time for China to get to know the virus, and also there's a learning curve how to manage that. So I think as soon as China realized that, China has historically in a history that never done before, that shut down a city of 11 million people and a province of 60 million. And basically those experiences of shutdown, lockdown, and quarantine, community test and things, is being now widely practiced around the world. So I think China has actually saved some time for the world. However, I do think that the whole society, like China, initially China received a lot of support from international community, including the United States and many other countries. But also China is also in return helping other countries as well. But somehow the narrative internationally was not right because of there's a conspiracy theory. There's a lot of scapegoating, and so what I think is important is that we should really focusing on the people-to-people help, focusing on those good stories, and actually the society, the private sector, the people-to-people, the NGOs, the think tanks, associations, all those people should really come out and communicate, talk. I think that because of the travel ban, there's less people-to-people contact. Also, really accelerated the situation a bit of mistrust. So I think as time goes on, we will see more explanation, we'll see more investigation, and we'll see more communication. So those will help to solve. So when we look back, China has really contained the virus. Now China has revived. China's two sections are in operation, in full swing. So this will be looking back as a good sign, and Chinese also economy is recovering. I think that will be a strong support to the global economy. So in the end, and people will understand, there's a lot of things that China has done for the world.
Exactly, as you said, the fact that China can have this political season go on in full swing is a proof that China is normally coming back economically. And some CPPCC members have proposed measures to put China's economy back on track as fast as possible. Those suggestions include speeding up reform of the finance, the protection of small enterprises, the development of digital economy. What do these proposals tell us about China's economic recovery, Mr. Wang?
Well, I think it's absolutely important that, for example, we've seen China has actually experienced a great achievement in terms of online combating virus. You have online education, online delivery, e-commerce. You have also all the this online infrastructure and entertainment. So that helps the helping fighting this coronavirus. Also big data management in control in COVID-19. So I think now with these two sections, there will be more experience, more proposals, more summary of what have done right, what have done wrong, what lesson can be learned. It's a great moment to reflect and also to recover and also to rediscover what has done right. So I think that will serve as enormous value, not only to the Chinese people but to the world as well. So I think this is really important that all the 5,000 members gather in the Great Hall of People. It's historic. It's never been done at this kind of occasion. In a shortened time, we are using the modern technology of virtual meetings, all those internet meetings. It's a great also development of technology. I think all those will be summarized well when this two sections finished.
And we have Professor Fu Jun on the line. Professor Fu, what do you make of the most urgent economic challenges facing China after COVID-19? And can China make policies suitable to the adaptation?
Well, I think the very urgent task is actually for the two sessions to deliberate. Where do we draw the line between the fiscal side and the monetary side? And since as in the wake of the COVID pandemic, a lot of provinces have fiscal problems. Now, to give more policy rooms to the government, we need to figure out where the money comes from. The extreme extreme argument, of course, well, they have to borrow, they issue bonds. The other side of the extreme is, well, they issue bonds, sort of in the United States Treasury bonds, is our government bonds, and then let the central bank buy it. Now, if you push that to the extreme, in effect, that means you just print money. I guess now how to balance that, ultimately, probably we need to listen to the deputies, the MPC numbers, and it's very critical at this point. My point is that at this moment, business is not as usual, and we need to float the economy a little bit, and that means a lot of money need to be injected into the system. I won't make a very strong argument about the stimulus. There is a danger to overstimulate the economy, but probably we should roll out what we should do a little bit early. For instance, the new emerging sector of the economy. You were talking about the digital sides. These are infrastructures. At the end of the day, the state will play a very important role. Make no mistake, the economy is always a political-economic economy. There is no such thing as a pure market. So there is that part of public goods that the state need to care of. So if we add this part, hopefully we can smooth over the projection of the economy. Well, in case of virus, people have been talking about flattening the curve, and in this case also we need to flatten the curve, sort of the negative side, a little bit. So that people feel less pressure under the circumstances.
And normally, during the political season every year, the MPCs will decide on an annual economic growth target, normally around 6.5% recently. But because of the pandemic, many people are doubting whether we will have a target this year because it seems to be a moving target. What do you think, Professor Fu?
I would argue for a flexible targets because we still face a lot of enormous uncertainties and unknowns. So it's not realistic just to forecast. There is a difference when you say prediction, forecast, conjectures. Forecast is always contingent upon many other conditions. And in this case, even when we look at the disease, we have learned a lot, but a lot of things continue to appear uncertain and unknown. So it's a groping through process. So it will be wise to have wriggling rooms. You have a band, well, the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, so that we make more reasonable policies.
I want your take, Mr. Wang, because China And the Chinese have been very exemplary in terms of delivering on the targets. And this year is the last year of the 13th five-year plan. Do you think the pandemic will affect we delivering on the result and also the result of eliminating abject poverty?
Well, I think there's two fronts. I do think that the Chinese economy will suffer, for the first half of the year, but then the second half we'll probably see a big rebound of that, because Chinese economy is probably the first among the world to back to 80%, according to the Minister of Industrial Technology. That 80% of small business back to the reduction, and also 80% of the service industry, according to the Minister of Commerce, is back to the economic activities already. So we see probably this is going to resume to 90%, maybe hopefully 100%. But do have the impact of the throttle. So I don't think the 6% target will be maintained. But if not, let's have a 3 or 4%. We're still pretty good, as given the current situation. But then, eliminating poverty, I think that probably is achievable. Given the government determination to do it. And also we have a few hundred villages left. But the most important is how we can maintain that, how we can sustain. We may can eliminate all the poverty this year, but can we continue to?
But you don't believe the drying up of physical revenue because of the slowing down of economy will affect the government's ability to lift up the rest?
I think China's the stimulus package is still, they have quite a few cards to play, and also the example of China just issued a $2 billion support to a developing country fighting coronavirus. I think China can also allocate enough sources to fighting the extreme poverty. The challenge is that after this year, can we continue to maintain a poverty alleviation year after year? That's the challenge. The poverty not coming back. That's the challenge. Now, I think reaching the target this year is still achievable, but the challenge is how to maintain that in the long run.
And Mr. Jia, you serve as a political advisor, and one of your responsibilities is to observe the NPC's work. And there's a long-awaited law, that is the draft of civil code, will be submitted to the NPC and also for your deliberation. What can you tell us about the civil code, which is a gigantic law, and why does it matter to the Chinese?
Well, it is a body of provisions on people's property rights, marriage, contract, a lot of things that involve people's day-to-day life. I think it's important because once people's rights are, especially economic rights and also other forms of rights, are specified and coded, and then it's much easier to settle these disputes among the people legally. In the past, people, when they face certain kind of problems, they find it difficult to address some of the issues. Now, with a civil code, I mean, they can have a better way of addressing their grievances and settle the disputes.
And I know your area is international relations. What specific proposals you brought to this year's CPPCC session?
Well, I have a few proposals, 3 proposals at the moment. One deals with how to deal with the challenge of deterioration of China-U.S. relations, what China should do in its part to stabilize the relationship. The second is about how China should present itself in terms of clarifying its policies and also addressing other countries' concerns.
Yeah, that is important. Can you tell us, can China improve relations with America and make it clear to Americans that China is for good?
Well, the challenge, it's very challenging at the moment. Actually, the relationship is still deteriorating, and it's likely to deteriorate in days to come. The U.S. government or Washington at the moment is very much emotionalized. It is in the emotion. They imagine things. They think that whatever China does is wrong. So it's very difficult at the moment. But we need to find a way to somehow not to make things, not to let things
deteriorate.
Deteriorate further. And we should not engage in this vicious attacks with each other. So somehow we need to think of ways to let Washington to cool down, and then let it to realize its fundamental interest in the stability of the relationship.
And Mr. Wang, do you share the similar pessimistic sentiment that the China-America relationship is on a rocky boat because of the sentiments towards each other is just becoming gloomy?
Well, I think that Sino-U.S. relation is on the verge of cliffs, and it's really dangerous. It's in the downward spiral. But actually, I'm also cautious and optimistic because China now is become the largest economy of the market. Chinese domestic consumption is already equal to that of the United States. All the multinational will have its future in China for this market, and China's domestic economy will be really serving as a strong indicator to the contribution of the world GDP growth. So who is going to abandon this biggest market in the world? And I think that the economic common sense will prevail in the end. So that I think that there's still people-to-people bond that between China and
the US. And do you believe that China will double down on welcoming more capital, more businesses, more people coming to its shore?
Absolutely. China should. That's what China should do, is to really open up further and wider, and really let all the world business come to China and make China the most profit center for all of them. And then so they cannot separate. It's the better world that we are working. Living intertwined together, and that's the security of the world peace in the future.
And Professor Fu, the problem is, will they come as they used to?
Well, we should think more deeply and systematically, facing the worsening scenario. We have used the word rational. But what I heard on both sides, so far we have talked about instrumental rationality. So it's business. After all, we need to think of other dimensions, the value rationality and the communicative rationality. And unless we come to closer to those three dimensions of rationality, probably we have a better chance to stabilize the relations, and hopefully we can have a gradual turning around. It's not all about money. I think it's wrong just to say it's money. It's too much instrumental rationality, okay?
And do you think China has always struck the right tone? What needs to be done differently in globalization 2.0?
Well, in our case, we need to reconcile with the two sets of propositions. One is normative proposition. Okay, normal proposition in the world is easy. When you do not think things are going well, you say you give a long list of good wishes. But we also need to be very consistent about empirical propositions. Well, to have a turnaround, what are specific things that we can find the common ground? And you identify those, and you choose those, and you magnify those. So to have a long list of wishes is one thing, but to move every step away and to increase the probability is another thing. So it's time for both sides to think deeply and systematically.
It is indeed time to think deeply and systematically. Thank you very much, Mr. Wang, Mr. Fu, and Mr. Jia. You've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm still in Beijing. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.